Hi, it's Delia. Thanks for clicking on. Okay, so I was talking to the planet earlier, and it sometimes can be challenging to talk about what the planet had to say because the planet may not be communicating with words. And I do see in pictures, having a lot of psychic training, so it's a combination of knowingness, which is conceptual, and pictures, and then I translate into words as best as I can. So what I've been talking with the planet about over time is where we are as humanity and in our evolution and of consciousness. I don't mean things. I mean as beings. And the planet, right? So it's not like the planet is a person and they have a evolutionary trajectory that would be easy to translate into human terms, because it's on a completely different wavelength and scale. But there are useful, like, similes, right? So there is a symbiotic relationship between spiritual beings in human bodies, just like there's a symbiotic relationship between spiritual beings that are in animal bodies or rocks and plants and trees. This whole sphere, dimension of life on Earth is about relationships. And it all boils down to relationships. Everything is about relationships. So there is this trajectory that's been going on in a certain vein of human development for a period of time, 3,000-4,000 years, whatever. The exact number doesn't matter. But in that time, there's been movement away from being identifying as part of nature. And it's been about, with the very convenient business about original sin, and bodies by nature are born out of sin and therefore sin in a container, which is a really convenient way of wedging and then enforcing, separating from self. And by self, I mean infinite being self, not the ego business. That's a whole other thing, whole other construct. So if you're taught, if you're enculturated to disassociate from yourself, your body, your emotions, your senses, your knowingness, your relationship with the infinite from the get-go, then your whole life is skewed because it's on a faulty premise. There's a serious fault line in the premise. So this particular line of reality cultivates and fosters and encourages and widens and spreads and deepens the separation from your own self, because you are an infinite being and you have this amazing body and you live in a world that says your body is not amazing and that it's stupid and that machines are better and titanium is better, and a lot of really crazy things. So this is all kind of like big picture stuff, which might lose you. But so let's bring it down to right here, right now. I'm out in the nature today. I'm out in my park, my beautiful space, and listening to the birds and the cicadas and the lawnmowers and all the things that make my body really happy, because it's, being outside and with my nature brothers and sisters, particularly the trees, but all of it, grasses, flowers, everything, birds, right? They're all like cousins, if not siblings, to me. They've always been there for me. I'm not a hiker, I'm not a camper. That's not the way our relationship manifests, but there is a deep kinship. And I live in Houston, Texas, which is hot and humid and early and often. And today is pretty pleasant. It's in the 80s, I guess. And the humidity is low. It's probably 70, which is low for here. So it's very pleasant. And it's, blessedly, it's still May. So I was thinking about, why does it matter to be outside? And for me, I was thinking about what a vitamin it is to be outside. It's like vitamin E, vitamin essence. The essence of our nature is to be part of nature. Our bodies are animals, like the birds and the bees and the dogs and the tree. Well, not the trees, but our bodies are animals, and our culture says, oh, no, we're better than animals, and yet we're not. And I was thinking about growing up here a long time ago, and how, especially the siblings that are older than me, which are most of them, all of them, and that previous, cousins that are 6, 10, 12 years older than me, all grew up deeply steeped in being outdoors all the time as children. It was common for parents to say, go outside and play. And it was common for us kids to be free range and go outside and play and not come home till dinner, or go to the pool all day when I was a kid in the summer times, and only come home when the pool was closed. So there was a lot of nature time, and part of what comes from that is that you get calibrated towards the appropriate temperature is the temperature that it is outside. Now, sure, you might want to turn the air conditioner on. God knows we do. But it's in relationship with what the temperature outside is. So in different, in summer it's a different temperature, and in the winter it's a different temperature inside, because it's always grounded to what's the temperature outside. And I'm born young enough and fair enough. I mean, I look at the sun and I get sunburn. And I always experienced that the sun was trying to kill me, basically. But it was normal, so I didn't have that kind of vocabulary. And I was always wilted, because heat is not my body's happy place. Some bodies are great with heat. I know people who live here and they love to go running when it's 100 degrees and 90% humidity. I can't comprehend that. But they seem to thrive on it. Viva la différence. So before air conditioning, things were kind of grounded in nature, and you knew that you were part of nature, and that you could be what's the word? You could recalibrate, right? So if there's no air conditioning, then your body gets calibrated to 90 and 100 degrees for 3 months at a time is normal. So your body adjusts to that normal. And then if you live someplace else where it's going to be, minus 10 for 3 or 6 months, then your body is calibrated differently. But it's calibrated based on nature. And here I am, the youngest, and so I found myself at one point in my life wanting to never leave a very narrow temperature zone. And I didn't want to go outside because I wanted the temperature to be a certain range. Now, granted, this was during a period when I had an illness, and it was very scary and debilitating. And I didn't have a lot of mobility at the time anyway. But I noticed that everybody else in the house was keeping the house in relationship to the temperature outside. And I noticed how much I didn't want to do that, which I could understand. It made sense to me that they were them and they wanted to do it that way, and I wanted to do it the way I wanted to do it. And now years have passed, and I'm healthy and living in even hotter weather. Moved back to my hometown, and the first couple of years I found myself not wanting to get calibrated to Texas weather at all. I was in total resistance, just like I had been in my childhood, to the weather of Texas. But then, in one of these conversations with the planet, we were talking about this, and the planet was saying that if you can keep yourself out of touch, or you can keep yourself in touch. And temperature, climate, is a way to keep yourself in touch. So when the planet explained it that way, I could see how it's more in line with my values to be aware of the temperature and to be calibrated in relationship to it. So I still like to sleep in the cold, relatively speaking, but that's been changing too. During last summer, I noticed that my cold night temperature was going up, which was appropriate because the temperatures in the summer here are up. So if you're going to be convinced that you're not part of nature, then you are also convinced of that whole manifest destiny and man's dominion over nature, which is just such a ghastly thought to me. But it's one that's running certainly the national economy and businesses and all the best cultures, is this whole idea of man's dominion over nature. And the structure of stories, man versus man, man versus himself, man versus nature. And it's all about domination, competition and domination. So it's this particular vein of culture, heritage, the conquerors that write the history books, that are propagating this idea to be separate from nature because we're supposed to be over nature, which, as appealing as that idea may be, because it's everywhere, it's in the infrastructure and in the premise of just about everything. It's very expensive. It's very costly, because what it costs you is your relationship with your true self. You're an infinite being. That may be a foreign concept, it may be an absurd concept, it may be too out of norm to comprehend. It took me years before I could even begin to crack that open in a way that I could truly understand it. Intellectually, it's a sentence. Of course, you can understand a sentence in a New York second, but understanding a sentence, understanding language is not the same thing as truly understanding a concept. That's a full body experience. So, if you like the idea that you're an infinite being and you have this amazing body, then they cooperate, they work together, which is how we're designed. So the whole idea of dominion can't really, doesn't fly, because spirit is who we've always been, spirit is who we are now, spirit is who we're going to be after this body. And it's chosen this body to express itself through in this Eden of the physical world. And the physical world is an Eden. It's just incredibly abundant and voluptuous and thriving and miraculous, 24/7. What this particular dominion vein of thinking, this colonialism, patriarchy, whatever you want to call it, is not thriving, and it is not generative, and it's based on competition, which is a lie. It's a made-up thing. And cooperation totally is our nature. So life itself, think about life. Life loves to thrive. Okay, do animals eat each other? Sure. Do animals eat plants? Sure. But there is a difference between symbiotic nurturing and cycles of life and domination. Very, very different. I mean, just think about domination. Close your eyes and just feel it in your body. Maybe ask to see pictures of domination and dominion and colonialism and manifest destiny. They're all warring pictures. They may be triumphant, but there's going to be, under that triumphant figure, that figure is going to have a foot on somebody's neck. Otherwise, it's not valuable. Which, by the way, is crazy. So, being in touch with nature, actually in touch with it, like spending time in it, like vitamin E. What was the E? Environment. Helps balance the brain in ways that thinking cannot do. And although we live in a culture that tells us everything has to go through our thinker and through words, it's hard to imagine that you have intelligences and methods of communicating information that are happening all the time that don't involve thinking, and yet you do. Plato said there's 5 senses. We've kept that shorthand live all along. Science knows that we have something like 92 senses, and that includes the sense of balance, the sense of time, the sense of where your limbs are, the sense of where your body is in space, the sense of where your other things are in relationship to your body. There's all kinds of senses. And all of the physical senses are of the octave of the physical world, right? And then corresponding on top of that are what you could call the spiritual senses. So if you have, when you have a physical sense of smell, you also have a spiritual sense of smell, or a psychic sense of smell. Your psychic senses can smell things. Or you have visual, physical eyesight, but you also have spiritual sight, or energetic sight, or clairvoyance, clear seeing, which is like a higher octave, and it sees more than what meets the eye, right? So the 5 physical senses do their job in the physical world, which is invaluable. And then each of them have their spiritual counterpart or partner, because we're co-operating as spirit and a body, the higher octave version. And the higher octave version operates in a way that's appropriate to energy, and it's different from physicality. So I know some of you have really enjoyed this, because it's to me, for instance, it's fascinating how intricately relating everything is. And if it's over your, if it's far-fetched or too far out, that's fine too. But there is the simple takeaway is be outdoors. Find a way to spend time outdoors. Not being productive, not gardening. You can do that too. But spend some time listening. Just sitting outside and listening to all that's going on. Now, if you're in a really urban place, like where I live, it's more sparse what you can hear, because the trees are a little farther away, so the birds are a little farther away, and then there's different birds at different times of day, and there's plenty of times a day when I don't hear any birds where I live, which is why I come here, because there's so many trees. Everything is so well cared for and voluptuous and nurturing and nurtured that it's, I guess, like, I think it's Japan, they call it a tree bath or a forest bath. It doesn't really matter what you call it. It just matters that you do it, and that you let your body steep in the nature it is a part of, and just breathe that in, and really allow that to make shifts in your brain waves and your synapses and your neurology. Because the physical world, the human world, unless it's relationships and you're listening to somebody talk about their day, or you're mutually discussing current events, or you're mutually discussing how things relate to people, or you're navigating, death in the family, or all the things that make us human, right? Because that's the important part. We have been convinced, our society has convinced us for some period of time, that it's the money that matters, and it's the economy that matters. What was that thing? It's the economy, stupid. those things do matter, but they are not the most important thing. If you don't have your health, if you don't have a body, none of that stuff matters at all. And if all you have are those things, you have nothing. So spend some time in nature. Make it a practice, right? Walking in nature is good. You know, walking through the neighborhood, I've done that, where I've just walked through the neighborhood and talked to the trees. And by talking to the trees, I'll say hello because, you know, it's polite. But I don't have conversations with the trees the way you do with a neighbor necessarily. But I do open myself to them and allow for however they communicate and however I can receive it, and however I can communicate to them and however they can receive it. So there's a lot more flow without definition, which is really legitimate. You know, not so much when you're talking to a banker or you're taking classes in school, but it is a really legitimate aspect of being human. And find a tree that you like. I loved doing this. Find a tree that you like, that you see on your routine, on your walk, and put your spine to the trunk of the tree. Lean back into the tree and close your eyes and just breathe. And just allow the tree moving along your spine to give your whole spine, and therefore your whole body, a healing. And just breathe it in. And just allow for that to happen without words, without definition, without description. You may get pictures, you may not. You may get sensations, you may not. You may get memories or there's lots of ways that you can perceive, and not all of them have words. So add being natural, being with nature as part of your ordinary routine, and just see what happens. Just being in nature improves my day by leaps and bounds. Nature will remind you what's real and what really matters, and puts you in a better grounded spot for going forth and doing what needs to be done in your physical world life. But you're doing it from a much more grounded and thriving kind of a space than the things I have to do to survive, which is always kind of depleting because you keep that survival threat with you all the time. So I know this has been long, but thanks for hanging in there. And I'd love to hear your comments, especially if you do start going into nature and do the tree healing. I'd love to hear your experiences about that. All right, so meanwhile, breathe, allow, pat your sweet body, and enjoy this Eden that we live in.